My story was I was at work one day.
Yeah.
And the day before he was killed, Dad said, "Hey, we need to go out to dinner for Valentine's Day because tomorrow we won't be able to."
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Cozumel and we sat in the one spot.
Yeah.
But you guys went there and I met you there.
Yeah.
But I went to Mally's to get some chocolate. And I wanted to get chocolate covered grapes and chocolate covered strawberries.
Mm-hmm.
So, they didn't have them. And I cried. I'm like, why am I crying?
Yeah.
It's fucking chocolate.
Yeah.
You know, seriously. But I didn't know. But like maybe something, the Holy Spirit, who knows? But something told me like, get him something. But, you know, it's a chocolate. I don't know. Something, maybe something was going on where, because he said a lot of things that he told me like the week before. Hey, we need to turn over the garden because it's too much for us to handle. Us. I don't do that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then he changed everything in the front. He changed it to perennials or what is it, annuals, perennials, whatever.
The flowers and stuff, right?
He changed the flowers out so they would come up and bloom.
Mm-hmm. So they'd bloom forever. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So, so we ended up, I got him Billy Bob's.
Yeah, I remember you
Billy
were pissed
Bob's.
about that.
And I'm like, yeah, here's your candy. So when we sat there and ate, I had a margarita and he got a Mexican Manhattan.
Nice.
Because he didn't know how. There was a Manhattan, but they just didn't know how to do it.
Oh, okay.
He called it the Mexican Manhattan. He goes,
Nice.
I don't know what they did to it, but it's a Mexican Manhattan. So he had a couple, and I had a jumbo, and then I'm sure we shared a fajita.
Mm-hmm.
We would do that all the time, share fajitas and stuff. And when we came home, he was really tired because it was like after a long day, you know, picking you guys up and everything. Derek was 15, you were
10.
10. And so so when we came home, I laid on the couch here, and then I fell asleep on the couch. And then this wasn't the same couch, it was a different couch, but I fell asleep on the couch here, pretty much passed out from one drink and being tired because I was at work and then went to eat too. And then he went up to bed. But every morning he would always say, I love you, and hug me wherever I was. If I was laying on the couch or whatever, I hardly ever slept on the couch. It was just that night. And some weird things happened too. It's like, you know, I'll mention that after. But Dad would always take Derek to work. And so he took him to school. I can't even talk. He'd take him to school, and he was running late because Derek was just like screwing around, you know, putzing around and everything. So for a long time, Derek held it against himself, thinking it was his fault because Dad was late to work.
Yeah.
But
which is crazy.
Yeah.
That's horrible to think.
So anyway, so next thing that happens is I go to work, you know, get you off to school and stuff like that. I go to work, and I was doing my first client. I was doing extensions, and I was almost finished. I had like a couple more to go, and I got a phone call from the post office, and they said Dave was in an accident. And the last accident he had with work, he pushed a glass window of a door, and the glass shattered, and it slit his wrist this way. Remember?
Yeah, I remember that.
And then he picked you guys up and took you to the hospital with him. I'm like, why would you pick them up first?
That's funny.
And then I met him there, and so that was before, but you know, he could have died from that.
Yeah.
You know, he could have died from that. And then so I got a phone call. They said he's being life flighted, and I'm thinking he's life flighted going on a Metro. In my head, I could not even think, where's Metro? How do I get there? And I was just like in this weird moment, you know. And then I called up. I asked one of the ladies that worked with me, could you cut this lady's hair? Because I can't. I have to leave. But as I was going to leave, I'm like, I got a phone call saying that he was going to Parma. So I'm like, how do I get to Parma?
Yeah.
And at the time, we didn't have the GPS on our phones and all this stuff, and maybe it was, and I just couldn't think. I was just like scattered for a second, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is really bad. If you have to life flight somebody, it's really bad. If something's going on.
Yeah.
So then I called up his brother, his sister, his mother, and I said, you need to come to the hospital. I'll meet you at Parma. And then everybody's there. Nobody knows what's going on. They just knew he's in an accident. And then I saw the life flight out there, but I saw an ambulance. And when I saw the ambulance, there was a little foyer, and I was by myself. I stood in the foyer, and I looked over, and there was the postmaster, and he shook the other guy's hand, and then he put his head down. My knees just unbuckled, and I just sat on the ground, and I just cried. I was just like, I knew he was gone because of that. So, anyways, the guy that he shook his hand, they came in, they picked me up, they took me with a family. We went into this one room, and they said, we tried to save him. He was hit by a car, and he flew about 500 feet, and he had a very faint pulse. We tried to do what we could, but we couldn't save him. And I walked past the guy who hit and killed him, and I felt like, remember the movie Ghost, walking past somebody, and I just felt like this feeling, like an eerie feeling about it. And then they let me go into the room by myself, and the room, it's like when I looked at him, he's laying there on a gurney, and his face was clean, nothing on his face, but he had this little tube in his mouth, and he had a sheet over him, and I held his hand, and it was cold, like super cold, and I didn't feel like him there. I didn't feel like it was him, you know? And I'm like, I started praying, and I just started saying, I need to know if he's in heaven. I need to know. And then all of a sudden, I had a rush of peace from my feet up to my head, and I just felt like he's okay. It was just like he was fine. And I had drops of blood, 3 drops of blood, and in my head I was like, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and they gave me the peace. And then all of a sudden, the pastor of the church walks in, and he goes, let's pray. And I said, wait 1 second. I said, you need to pray for everybody's anger, because something happened here, and I can't explain it. And then all of a sudden, everybody's in the room, and Aunt Brenda has epilepsy.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's a little bit different than most people. But what she did, though, in the room,
Yeah.
like, she put her hands behind Dad's head, and then she went like this, and then she smelled the blood on her hands because the back of his head was all off. And that was, like, horrifying to see that, you know? But she was like this praying, and Kathy started screaming at her, and I said, stop. I said, stop yelling at her. If she needs to do this, let her do this.
Yeah.
You know? And then everybody's crying and screaming, and it's like chaos is going on. And I looked at the TV on the wall, and there was on the news with Dad, on Channel 19 News. There was a picture of him, and I'm like, what time is it? My kids, I can't let them know. My kids are coming home from school. And we took away Derek's phone because he was being a jerk. And I'm like, I remember calling Derek and saying, Derek, you guys go downstairs, play Webkins, don't answer the phone, don't turn on the TV. Because I was so afraid that you guys were going to see that before I could tell you. And you guys are by yourself, and that would be horrifying, you know? It was bad enough. It was horrifying enough. Then it would be like you guys just being alone. And I was so scared. And there was a guy, he was a counselor, and he's like, hey, I could go with you if you want. And I'm like, no, I could do this. Even though I was a mess, but I was like, oh, I could do this. And then halfway home, I'm like, I can't do this alone. I can't. Like, you know, it's like my mom had died in 2004, I had nobody to turn to. I was just like, I don't have anybody. And the love of my life just died. And how do I do this? Because we put each other first. Our kids were second. And when you have kids one day, do the same thing because you won't regret it. Because, it's like we always thought, like, when we grow old, we'll still have each other because the kids will be gone.
Yeah.
Because so many people just live through their kids, So, anyways.
I think that's good, though. Put each other first.
Yeah. So, anyways, the guy ended up meeting me here. But I told you guys, he came here 15 minutes after I told you about, And I sat on a couch that wasn't this couch, but it was
right there, though.
Yeah, it was right
I
here.
remember.
Every bad thing was ever sat. You sit in the living room and we tell you the bad news, like the dog drowned in the pool, Dad died, and you.
No, I remember you said right when we got home. I remember I begged Dad to come to the Valentine's Day party.
Yeah.
Like, cause you couldn't go, you were working, and everybody at school like Dad, and they're like, oh, like tell your dad to come.
Well, that's what he didn't say. He was killed on Valentine's Day. Like a lot of people.
Yeah, and he was, was killed on Valentine's Day too. So this all happened then, but. I kept asking him to go and go and go, and he said no. He picked up somebody else's shift that day.
Yeah.
He wasn't even supposed to work. He picked up somebody else's route, and.
But years later, the guy that was had his route, he came up to Derek in the bank, and the guy said to Derek, he goes, "That should have been me that day," and he goes, "No, that was the day my dad was supposed to die." That's what Derek said to him. Yeah.
Whoa.
Isn't that crazy? But anyways, so. When somebody takes away your love of your life...
That one got me. That was tough.
Yeah. When someone takes away the love of your life, it's like you get all these feelings, and as much as I said, don't be angry, I had so much anger, and it was not spoken. I didn't say I wanted to, run this kid over myself. Anytime anything would happen, people would say, "Oh, run your ass over." And it's just like, it broke my heart every single time. When people say stuff like that, or you're watching TV, like some shows, it's like one of my favorite shows is it Meet Joe Black or something like that? It's with,
Not Family Feud?
Yeah, Family Feud's the other one, but, Meet Joe Black, there's some lines in there, but he gets hit by a car. And it's like, or by bus or something, like whenever you see that kind of stuff, it's just like, it makes me hurt because it's like, Dad was hit by a car. And so all the time we didn't know the details about the guy. We didn't know if he was drunk, if he had any kind of stuff in his system, blah, blah, blah. And all we knew is this guy took my life away, my husband's life and my life, my kid's life, his friend's life. It's like everybody's life changed that day.
And when you told us right there, I mean, I sat over here. I sat over there. I think Derek sat here, and
Derek ran upstairs.
I remember exactly what you said too. We played Webkins. We did our thing. You said, "Don't look at the TV, no nothing," and you sat us down. You said, "Dad got into a car accident and he died." And I don't know how we just immediately believed you. Like, we didn't even question it. Mm-hmm. We just knew it was a thing, because you called me and you said it's the worst day of my life. Mm-hmm. I remember I said, "How was work?" And you said it was the worst day of my life. And I'm like, "Oh, did my mom get fired or something?" But no, it was way worse. But I remember just immediately we started crying, and Derek went up to his room, and I was puking and throwing up in the bathroom. But
yeah,
it's just crazy, because now if somebody tells me someone dies, I feel like I would just be like, "No way." Yeah. Or I would just not feel as much, depending who it is. But
with the trauma that we've had, it's like the feelings that you get when people say that somebody died. You're like, that's life. Not to be mean,
sucks now.
But it's like, or that sucks, and it's like, yeah, you're sad for some people, but it's like,
it depends how close they are to me. Like, if you or Derek died, I'd be fucked up for sure.
Yeah, but so anyways,
but I wouldn't believe it if someone called me and said you died. I'd believe it, but if like someone told me "Oh, blank died," I almost don't believe it at first. I'm like, what, really? Like,
well, so we didn't have any details on the guy. It's like, it's just we knew that, what happened, and then all of a sudden they said they weren't gonna prosecute, and I'm like, what do you mean they're not gonna prosecute? This guy killed my husband. Yeah. How are you not gonna prosecute? So I called I called the prosecutor downtown. I'm like, we have to do something. Parma Heights was not going to do anything. And the detective that was there, he helped me. He helped me get a hold of the prosecutor. He did everything. He almost like held my hand through the whole thing. 17 pre-trials, 2.5 years go by.
Yeah, that was a long trial.
And it was like over and over again. I would take my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, they'd go with me every single time. The final time, when I said to the prosecutor, I said, is there any way that I could have a face-to-face talk with him? I just need to see him. I need to talk to him.
But the family didn't. That was the only one they didn't show up for.
Only one they didn't show up to. The only one they didn't show up to. And I sat across from him and I said, one day when you walk down the aisle, tell me how you could ever live without your husband. One day when you hold your baby in your arms, tell me how you could live without that baby.
Yeah.
You're never going to know how I feel or my mother-in-law feels or anybody feels. And I had that book of, the memory book of Dad. Mm-hmm. And I pointed it out. And I talked to him for like an hour myself. I just blah, 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 blah. And I said what I had to feel. The whole time he's sitting there, this is him.
He's crying.
Sobbing, hurting. You could see the pain. You could feel it. And then when he said about my mother killed herself when, whatever, like she died and now
take it back. So he was crying the whole time.
Okay, he was crying, and then he said that he knows how my kids feel. That's what he said. Oh. And I was like mad because I'm like, how do you know how my kids feel? And then he said whenever he was 13, his mother killed herself, and now his mother's face is replaced by your dad. Yeah. And I got up, walked around the table. He had 2 attorneys next to him. I had the prosecutor and the detective and a cop. And I walked around the table, past them. Everybody stood up. They were afraid what I was going to do. And I hugged him. And I whispered in his ear, if you never see jail time, I'm fine with that because you're going to live in your own prison in your own head. He went in this back room with his attorney and the prosecutor. And he says he just wants this to be done. Mm-hmm. And he was going to plead guilty. So he pled guilty. They went to sentencing. The judge said to me, he goes, Mrs. Donafee, what would you like to happen here? I go, you know what? I'm not the judge. I'm not the jury. I don't know what you should do here. I don't know. Well, the legal law says 6 months in a home arrest or 6 months in jail. What's either one of them going to do? It's not bringing Dad back.
Yeah. That's kind of how I thought. Everybody had so much anger towards the guy. Even Derek, you know. Everybody just, like, hated the guy.
Yeah.
But, like, I kind of just, like, I didn't even think about the guy.
Well, I gave him my number, and I told him to call me. 2 weeks later, he called me. Because when I started that conversation, I said to him, I go, 6 weeks ago, or, like, it was 6 weeks prior to that. I go, 6 weeks ago, I had a cat, and I killed it. And I says, it took me probably about a month to get over.
You killed it?
I had a cat, and I killed a cat shortly before that. Like 6 weeks prior to sitting down and talking to him, December 14th of that year.
When did you have a cat?
I hit a cat.
Oh, you hit a cat.
I killed a cat.
Oh.
Not on purpose.
Oh, it sounded like the way you phrased it sounded like you purposefully killed a cat. I was like,
no, I hit a cat and killed it.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you said it was, I remember you said, and you looked in your rearview mirror and you saw it and you were like all fucked up about it,
Yeah, so it lasted me like a month. Mm-hmm. I go, how long did it take you to get over killing my husband? And as soon as that's when he started, and could not stop crying. And he didn't stop.
Yeah.
His eyes were puffy. He was crying. Like, it was so sad. And then,
Did you forgive him right then and there, though?
Yeah.
Just immediately forgave him then?
Yeah. I felt like I can't hold on to this anger and this pain. I need to get it off my chest. I can't. It was just like something that was just like, it tormented me, So, let's fast forward. I talked to him many times for months, years, and we
Does he still write you on Valentine's Day?
No, I was going to write him for Christmas. I was going to say, hey, Merry Christmas and stuff, and I will reach out to him now because see if he'll go. But anyway, so
go what?
Go on a podcast with you.
I want to have him on a podcast. I feel like I don't know. I don't know. I feel like everybody's gonna be so pissed. People are gonna be pissed I don't kill him on spot, you know?
Oh.
Like, but
Well,
the
they
way
could
I
go-
took it was, I mean, I met the guy and I shook his hand and I forgave him on TV.
Well, let me fast forward.
But,
Let me
yeah.
fast forward my story, then
But
you could tell him about that.
I will say I took it as my dad's gone. Like my dad died.
And you
I
can't
didn't
bring him back.
I didn't. Yeah, I can't bring him back. But I didn't even think that somebody even killed him until later in life. You know, I forgave him on TV, but then later in life, I started having the thoughts like, did I actually forgive that guy? Like, did I forgive him? Did I ever even process that somebody killed him? Like,
Yeah.
and I really started thinking and then, you know, as I get older, it's harder and harder almost. Like,
Yeah.
I dealt with the grief, but like as a kid, it's like, oh, I don't have a dad. But now that I'm older, I'm like, I didn't have a dad, and that would have been so beneficial. You know, like other people like get to have a beer with their dad. Other people watch sports with their dad. Other people, you know, their dads don't die until they're, you know, like 35, 40 years old, even older sometimes. So it's like,
35, 40.
I'm just saying.
You mean 80s?
No, I'm saying
90s?
when they're
Yeah.
35.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like, I also feel like, oh, like I didn't learn how to be a man. I didn't learn the hard work and the discipline and all this stuff. And it's like, maybe I wouldn't have learned it even if he was alive. But I'm saying, like, I noticed my friends that were raised by single fathers versus single mothers. I'm like, they don't have a lot of things that I have, and I don't have a lot of things that they have. So it's nice because I get to learn kind of how to be a man from my friends that were raised by single fathers. But it's like, I don't know. And there's the statistic, like, a lot of people in prison, like, don't have single father school shooters. And I mean, I'm like lucky that I turned out this way, you know?
Thanks, Mom.